Good evening. Let me start by orienting us carefully, because what happened here is precise, contained, and important, and it deserves to be told plainly. The city at the center of this is Kupyansk. It sits in northeastern Ukraine, and it matters because control of it matters. Not symbolically, not rhetorically. It matters in a very real, operational sense. Ukrainian forces were already in control of Kupyansk. That is the starting point. Russian forces attempted to take it back. That attempt did not succeed. What happened next and how it unfolded is what Ukrainian commanders described after the fact. And every part of this is grounded in what they said and what they confirmed, without embellishment. Russian forces attempted to infiltrate the city using an underground gas pipeline. Not above ground, not through open streets, through a buried route out of sight. That is not conjecture. That is not analysis. That is the method Ukrainian commanders reported. Ukrainian troops detected the attempt. They responded. They held the city. And when it was over, Kupyansk remained under Ukrainian control. There is a temptation in moments like this to rush past the setup and get to the outcome. But the setup is the outcome. Because this was not a clash that happened by accident. Russian forces were attempting to retake a city that they had lost. Ukrainian forces were defending a position they already held. The roles here are clear. Ukrainian defense and counterattacks stopped the infiltration attempt. That phrase matters. Defense and counterattack. Not just holding ground, but actively responding. One Ukrainian commander described the result in simple terms. We held. It's a short sentence. It doesn't explain how difficult it was. It doesn't explain what it took. But it explains the result. The underground gas pipeline is not a metaphor. It is literal. Russian forces attempted to use it as a route into the city. Ukrainian forces did not allow that attempt to succeed. Kupyansk remained under Ukrainian control at the end of that engagement. That control has consequences. Ukrainian commanders stated that holding Kupyansk strengthens Kiev's negotiating position in peace talks. That is not a prediction. That is not a political argument. It is a direct statement of how they understand the situation. Control of territory matters when negotiations happen. Control of Kupyansk matters. One Ukrainian officer put it this way, quietly, without drama. What we hold, we bring with us. Nothing more than that, nothing less. This attempt to retake Kupyansk did not change the lines on the map. That is the point. The lines stayed where they were. Russian forces tried to move them. Ukrainian forces prevented that. There were no announcements of victory parades. There were no sweeping declarations. Just confirmation of what happened. An attempt was made. It was stopped. And when commanders spoke afterward, they spoke about the city not as an abstract place, but as a position that remains in their hands. The fact pattern here is narrow. Russian forces attempted to infiltrate Kupyansk via an underground gas pipeline. Ukrainian forces detected, defended, and counterattacked. The city remained under Ukrainian control. Commanders said this strengthens Kyiv's negotiating position. That is the full frame. Nothing added, nothing assumed. And yet, even within that narrow frame, you can hear the weight of it. Still ours, one voice said. Just that. And so we begin here, with a city still standing where it stood before, and with a line that did not move. That is where this begins. So let's stay with this moment and walk it forward carefully, because the way this unfolded matters just as much as the outcome. Russian forces did not approach Kupyansk in an open, conventional way. According to Ukrainian commanders, the attempt centered on covert movement, specifically through an underground gas pipeline. That detail tells us how deliberate this effort was. This was not a probe. It was not incidental contact. It was an attempt to re-enter a city without triggering immediate detection. The pipeline already existed. It was not created for this purpose. It was repurposed as a route. Ukrainian commanders were explicit about that. Ukrainian forces identified the infiltration attempt before it succeeded. That is the next factual step, and it is critical. Detection came before loss of control. Once the attempt was identified, Ukrainian troops responded. They did not withdraw. They did not cede ground. They engaged. Defense alone was not the full response. Commanders described counterattacks. That means movement outward, not just holding in place. The city did not change hands during this engagement. That is not an interpretation. That is the confirmed result. When Ukrainian commanders spoke afterward, they did not dwell on tactics in detail. They focused on the outcome. Kupyansk remained under Ukrainian control. One officer described the moment with a kind of calm finality. They didn't get through. Again, a short sentence. No added meaning, just the result. It is important to be clear about what is not being said. There were no claims of expansion, no statements about pushing beyond the city, no announcement of new territorial gains. This was about preventing loss. Russian forces were attempting to retake Kupyansk. That was the objective. Ukrainian forces prevented that objective from being achieved. Everything else flows from that. Kupyansk is described as strategic. That word is used by Ukrainian commanders not as rhetoric, but as explanation. The city's location in northeastern Ukraine gives it importance in military positioning. Holding it means maintaining leverage. Losing it would mean giving that up. After the engagement, Ukrainian commanders connected this directly to negotiations. They said that maintaining control of Kupyansk strengthens Kyiv's negotiating position in peace talks. They did not speculate about outcomes. They did not describe what those talks might look like. They stated a relationship between territory held and leverage held. That is all. There is something revealing in how restrained the language is. No embellishment, no dramatic flourish. One commander said, "What matters is what stays ours." That sentence doesn't reference an enemy. It doesn't reference future plans. It references the present state. And the present state, after the infiltration attempt, was unchanged. The pipeline attempt did not alter control. The counterattacks did not overreach. The city remained where it was, under the same control it had before. That is why this moment stands out. Not because of what shifted, but because nothing did. In conflicts, movement often draws attention. Advances, retreats, breakthroughs. But sometimes the most consequential moments are when an expected change does not occur. This was one of those moments. Ukrainian forces identified an unconventional approach. They responded. They held their position. And afterward, they spoke not about triumph, but about position. "Kupyansk is still with us," one said. That sentence carries no argument. It carries a fact. And that fact, according to Ukrainian commanders, now travels forward into negotiations, unchanged, intact. That is where we are at this point in the account. An attempt made quietly, an answer delivered firmly, and a city that did not change hands. After the attempted infiltration through the underground gas pipeline, after the defense and the counterattacks, the most important fact remained unchanged. Kupyansk stayed under Ukrainian control. That is not a dramatic ending. It is a precise one. Ukrainian commanders were clear about what this meant. They did not frame it as a turning point. They did not describe it as a breakthrough. They described it as leverage preserved. Control of Kupyansk, they said, strengthens Kiev's negotiating position in peace talks. That statement is not abstract. It is grounded in the physical reality of territory held. Kupyansk is a strategic city in northeastern Ukraine. Its control carries weight. And that weight did not shift. There is something important in how commanders spoke about this afterward. They did not overstate the significance. They did not claim it changed everything. They stated exactly what it changed. It maintained what already existed. One Ukrainian commander summed it up quietly. "Nothing was taken from us." That sentence does not celebrate. It clarifies. Russian forces attempted to retake Kupyansk. That attempt failed. The method used, infiltration through an underground gas pipeline, did not succeed in altering control of the city. Ukrainian defense and counterattacks held the line. That is the sequence. That is the record. When Ukrainian commanders spoke about negotiations, they did so carefully. They did not outline demands. They did not describe timelines. They simply stated that holding Kupyansk strengthens Kyiv's position. The connection is direct. Territory held equals leverage held. This is not about hypothetical talks or future outcomes. It is about entering any negotiation without having lost ground. And that is why this moment matters. In many conflicts, attention is drawn to advances. But here, the significance lies in prevention, in stopping an attempt to reverse control. Kupyansk did not change hands. That fact now carries forward. Ukrainian forces did not claim more than that. They did not need to. Another voice put it this way, almost as a reminder: we are where we were. It sounds simple, but in this context, it is decisive. The attempted infiltration did not open a path. The pipeline did not become an entry point. The city remained secured by the same forces as before. And when commanders spoke about peace talks, they spoke from that position. No loss, no retreat, no adjustment, just control maintained. That is the end of this account. An attempt was made. It was stopped. A city remained under the same control. And Ukrainian commanders stated clearly what that control means as talks continue. Nothing more, nothing less.